What will likely go down as one of the greatest what-ifs in geek culture history. What if Ben Affleck actually got a star as the Batman in the solo film? It's pretty much out the window. We're never going to see that. But there was another announcement or a rumor out there that was just as cool, that Ben Affleck was actually going to direct a Batman movie fighting against Deathstroke the Terminator. That thing sounded absolutely amazing. They had some really good actors in along with that. And it was one of the things around the Zack Snyder era that actually sounded like it was cool. That was probably going to be really successful. We got hints from James Gunn that Ben Affleck was actually going to be joining the team for the DCU, and we might be seeing a Ben Affleck directed DCU film. Well, he didn't even say might. It sounded like it was actually going to happen. It turns out that is all balderdash. Ben Affleck has put a stop to that shit this past week in no uncertain terms. In a recent interview with The Hollywood Reporter, actor-director Ben Affleck stated, "I would not direct something for the James Gunn DC. Absolutely not. I have nothing against James. Nice guy. Sure, he's going to do a great job. I just wouldn't want to go in and direct in the way they're doing that. I'm not interested in that." This, of course, conflicts with previous statements from Gunn when he tweeted that he met with Ben yesterday precisely because he wants to direct, and we want him to direct. We just have to find the right project. Well, it sounds like they're not on the same wavelength, because Ben Affleck has stated in no uncertain terms he is not coming back to direct the DCU anything. And man, that Batman movie would have been absolutely amazing. Ben Affleck directing a Batman movie with Deathstroke the Terminator. That should have been a trilogy or something like that. Although, as a DC fan, I would prefer to see Deathstroke the Terminator involved more with the Titans or possibly Dick Grayson. But hey, Batman exactly wouldn't have been a consolation prize there either, especially if it's directed by somebody as talented as Ben Affleck. Now, we can all make fun of Geely and some of his choices as an actor, but as a director, he's really done some amazing stuff. The Town comes to mind. Obviously, he won an Oscar for Argo, and he's had a lot of success. And we know that he's like a lifelong Batman fan. I think the rumor was that he had actually built a bat cave in his house, with all that money that he earned being a big movie star over the years. So it's clear that at one time he had an undenying passion for DC Comics and Batman, but that has clearly waned over time. This also contradicts with James Gunn's assertions about Affleck in the official announcement of the DC Studios plans. Gunn at the time confirmed that neither the Batman actor Robert Pattinson or Ben Affleck would be in The Brave and the Bold, but also said, "We're working with Ben Affleck, who has been a part of our team trying to bring this thing together, and he really wants to direct one of our projects. We're excited for him to do that." It doesn't sound like he's a part of the team. I guess he was on the team because he does have a brief flash. I guess he was on the team like in the idea that he has a brief cameo in The Flash, which he does talk about. We'll talk about that quote here as well. But I don't know, was James Gunn lying to everyone from the very beginning, or is Ben Affleck just kind of wishy-washy? Because it sounds like they had conversations and James Gunn came away pretty convinced that Ben Affleck wanted to be a part of the DCU and potentially direct a future project. They just had to find the right one. And Ben Affleck is saying absolutely not. Apparently, his time with the Justice League film is probably the root of all this. He actually talks about it quite a bit in the interview itself, where apparently it led him to drinking. He had a bit of what you might call a midlife crisis. I can identify with the man. When I was in Texas at the end of my military career, my wife and my one son at the time, I've got 3 now, were here in the Philippines, and I hated my job. I didn't like what we were doing. I knew we were going in a terrible direction, and my talents were being wasted by the United States government. I was like, what am I doing here? I'm supposed to be retiring, the not too distant future. And I had midlife crisis. I had a breakdown. I was losing it. And I might have started drinking myself. So I understand when something puts you in that place. Although we did talk about better times, the silver lining, as he calls it, when Zack Snyder got to make his Snyder cut of Justice League and they got to release it onto, obviously, HBO Max to some acclaim. He seemed to be proud that it was his highest rated IMDb film ever, that people actually liked that movie. I'm personally, I'm in the minority, I guess. I didn't quite like that one. I just didn't really like anything Zack Snyder was doing with anything involved with the DCEU. Although the one thing that he did that was great, that is undeniable, like he had an eye for casting. He doesn't know the characters. He can't do the universe whatsoever, like any justice. But my goodness, he figured out who the best actors were to portray these characters. They just portrayed the wrong versions of the characters. Henry Cavill as Superman, I think probably should have worked. Unfortunately, he starred in a Hyperion movie that pretty much torpedoed the DCEU from the beginning. And then, Avengers blows up. They make so much money. They're like, we can't wait for a Batman movie to come out to finally get the Justice League together. We need to jump right into that. So we get Batman versus Superman. And you know what? Ben Affleck was a good Batman. It just sucks that he never got his own Batman movie and everything was fast-tracked. And, hey, Jason Momoa seemed like an odd choice for Aquaman at the time. I think it actually kind of works out, although he's not really Aquaman. He's like bro Aquaman. He's definitely not Arthur Curry, but within the universe, I think it's one of the bolder choices that they made that I think actually worked. I think Ray Fisher as Cyborg was actually pretty good, even though I'm not a big fan of that character. Gal Gadot, I think she worked out pretty well as Wonder Woman. They made $1 billion off that first movie. So Zack Snyder, for all his warts, had a good eye for talent. But unfortunately, that Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League was not enough to cleanse the palate of Ben Affleck, because he says by the time the Snyder cut hit HBO Max, the damage was already done. Quote, I was going to direct a Batman movie, and Justice League made me go, I'm out. I never wanted to do any of this again. I'm not suited. That was the worst experience I've ever seen in a business which is full of some shitty experiences. It broke my heart. There was an idea of someone, Joss Whedon, coming in like, I'll rescue you, and we'll do 60 days of shooting, and I'll write a whole thing around what you have. I've got the secret, and it wasn't the secret. That was hard. Well, you can tell he had a lot of high expectations, for that Justice League movie. He's been in some bigger stuff. He was in that, what was it, Pearl Harbor? I'm sure he thought Pearl Harbor was going to be a big deal, especially coming off the heels of Titanic, but Pearl Harbor sucked, and the Justice League is even worse. So, I don't know, it feels like Ben Affleck has found his stride, his groove, as a really high-end, really good director that can tackle a lot of different genres out there, that anytime he wants to go in there, he can actually go and act a little bit and do some really good stuff. Ben Affleck, for all the guff he got about Bennifer or whatever that stuff was, he's actually got a pretty decent portfolio as an actor. But I think his brightest days ahead are as a director. So it sucks that James Gunn and Warner Brothers aren't going to be able to bring in Ben Affleck, the director, into the DCU and apply his talents there, because it sounds like he really did have his heart in the DCEU. He really wanted to make it work. But then he saw it kind of all unravel in front of him. And like I said, it drove him to drinking and stuff like that, which happens to the best of us. We all have our worst days, and you just got to get over those things. But he did take solace in the same interview, noting he did finally get his version of Batman right one time. He states, yeah, I did finally figure out how to play the character Batman, and I nailed it in The Flash. For the 5 minutes I'm there, it's really great. And a lot of it's just tone. You've got to figure out what's your version of the person. Who is the guy that fits what you can do? I tried to fit myself into a Batman. Well, he's certainly got the build for it. He's got the height. He's kind of thick. You can tell he muscled up for the role. And hey, he even had a pretty decent Batman voice. So, what might have been, he might have been the quintessential, the greatest ever Batman we had on the big screen. For now, we'll have to settle for Christian Bale probably being the best Bruce Wayne we've ever had on the big screen, and Michael Keaton being the best Batman we've ever had on the big screen. Not so much because their version was better than Ben Affleck. I think Ben Affleck's potential as Batman and Bruce Wayne outshined both of those actors. He certainly had a more physical presence than either one of them, and a more of a believability because of that physicality. He felt like he could be Bruce Wayne. He felt like he could be on the streets knocking the shit out of people. You never really feel that about Christian Bale. And I like Batman 1989, but Michael Keaton at the time was more of a comedian, and he's never really been a big guy, you know what I mean? So, what might have been the greatest of all time will just be, a footnote in the annals of history of geek culture. Ben Affleck should have gotten his Batman movie. He didn't get that. He got fast-tracked into the Justice League. That thing all fell apart. They brought in Joss Whedon. It left a sour taste in his mouth. He never wants to be involved with the DCU again, despite what James Gunn, the CEO or co-CEO of DC Studios, has to say. And that's all we have to say about that. And this isn't the only thing that hasn't gone well for James Gunn and the rollout of the DCU. Obviously, we've got years ahead of us. He did just hire himself to direct the Superman film before these movies even make it to the big screen, but I think it could have went better. Sure, they were able to sell some old trade paperbacks and collections and whatnot, but I think he's missed the mark in explaining what the DCU is and how they're going to run it, because it's been a contradiction the entire time. It's not just Ben Affleck not directing a movie like James Gunn claimed it would be. It's a lot more than that. If you can't see the video here, there's also a link in the video description.